It's the 2nd of September, and politicians return to Westminster today after the summer recess. And of course, they go back to Parliament on the back of a general election, and also a summer of riots, of discontent, of a bit of civil unrest. And of course, there's a big pressure on the Labour government right now to come up with a plan for the months ahead. So, joining me to talk about that, I'm very grateful to welcome to the show former leader of the Liberal Democrats, Tim Farron. Welcome to People in Politics. Tim Farron, thank you very much for giving up your time and doing this.
David, it's an absolute blessing. Thank you for having me.
Really nice to meet you. So you all go back to Parliament next week, all right? So I wonder what's it like after you go out back after a long recess, and also what do you think are going to be some of the bills that come up first in this new term in Parliament?
Yeah, so what's it like, and then what might come up? I mean, the first thing is the election happening when it did, 4th of July, meant there were only really 2 or 3 weeks of any kind of activity in Westminster, and then recess happened. So for me, I spent all of my August running around my constituency, which is, I've had a boundary change. So we went from being a very large rural constituency in the Lake District and part of the Yorkshire Dales to being even larger. So we're now the second biggest constituency in England by landmass. And just to give you a bit of a picture, my old constituency had, I think, 61 parishes. My new one has 95.
So a third bigger.
Yeah, a lot bigger. So I have more lakes and more mountains, and actually quite a few more people. So it's incredibly beautiful. And it's been great fun to get around to those new communities and the ones I've represented up until now already. I mean, I've been an MP for 19 years for most of my patch, and for 2 months for some of my patch. And so that's been a delight. But obviously Parliament goes back on Tuesday. And in sense, obviously been a huge change. Most MPs are new. And yet I think I've got a feel for what the House of Commons is going to be really like. And that will be interesting next week. In terms of what I think might come up, and obviously one of the areas I'm most concerned about, because it's what I speak for in the Liberal Democrats, and if you live in a rural area like mine, you're bound to be interested in these things, are, if you like, the DEFRA area, environment, food and rural affairs. And under that brief comes water. And I'd say water quality is one of the top 2 or 3 issues during the election. And so we're all eyes and ears on what Labour, the new government, will propose when it comes to trying to improve water quality.
Yeah, I remember Ed Davey did quite a lot during the campaign, and one of his stunts was on a support to have water. And I felt like at the time people were almost taking the mickey out of him for doing these outrageous stunts, but it had the desired effect, and those more MPs. So who's laughing at him now?
Yeah, quite.
I hope you don't mind me asking this. I already thought about this. Well, so you go back off the back of a summer of riots and racial sort of religious tension. I wonder if you thought that Christianity was like the most persecuted religion in the UK. And
I don't.
That.
Well, David, that's a really great question. And obviously what's happened over the summer, particularly following the unspeakable wickedness of the murder of those 3 lovely little girls in Southport. What happened in the hours afterwards was that it's very obvious now, a group of, and I use the phrase very advisedly, far-right, extreme, neo-Nazi people organised to try and take advantage of that unspeakable evil tragedy, which is beyond reprehensible. And some people are caught up in that who shouldn't have been, who should have known better. But that's how it works. How far-right extremism works is that you get a handful of very clever racial ideologues who then seek to manipulate a much larger, still not very large, but a larger group of people who perhaps aren't quite as intelligent, I'm afraid to use that phrase. That's where the riots came from. You asked whether Christianity is the most persecuted religion in the UK. My short answer is I don't think it is. But I think globally it is. Globally, it definitely is. But in the UK, it's interesting. And I, as a committed Christian myself, I kind of think, first of all, I suppose I first think, if I believe the Bible, I know I've got nothing to worry about. And it's not as though Christianity is ever going to be rubbed out. I also understand the viewpoint of many people that because in the UK we have a Church of England, or in England we have a Church of England, we have a monarch who is the head of the church, and you've got bishops in the House of Lords, Christianity doesn't look all that persecuted. I as a Christian would say a lot of that is nominal Christianity. That's the furniture of the state. It's not actual Christianity.
It's not the church. I get that.
Yeah. But I also think that, for instance, how shall I put this? Elon Musk is a person of interest, shall we say. And he, I think at some point, the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, said something at the point that mosques were being assaulted, people trying to set fire to them, and indeed potentially setting fire to hostels where asylum seekers were. And Keir Starmer said, we must stand to defend, words to the effect of, the Muslim community. Elon Musk then, in his totally ill-informed way, said, but all communities need protecting. And my reply to that is, how stupid is that to say? Because the reality is, I'm a white person. No one is telling me to, no one's surrounding my house or my place of worship and telling me to go home, or throwing bricks and petrol bombs at my place of worship. So the point is, yes, all communities need protecting, but not all of them are currently under threat. And so I'm a Christian, but I recognise that it was at that point, and maybe still now, but at that point, it was Muslim people, and has been the case for much of the last 12 months, if not for longer, Jewish people, whose very personal safety was at risk and whose places of worship were being targeted. So let's not have any nonsense about protecting all communities when it's only some communities who are being actively targeted. So, globally, China, North Korea, Iran, you name it, Christianity is comfortably the biggest faith group in the world and the most persecuted. It always has been. And it can be a challenge to be a Christian in the West, but it's not unsafe. And we should celebrate that.
That's an interesting thought. It is challenging, but it's not unsafe. And I suppose I wanted to ask you, because this is a very old call. that I'm still remember back in 2015 or 17. I thought your career had been directly affected by your Christian faith, which I must say, which I share, and I wanted to know if you thought it had been affected by that, because you were kind of ridiculed. I think you're ridiculed by certain corners of the press, which I've not seen or heard the press ridicule other people for their faith at the same time.
I suppose my career, let's be honest, my career has been affected by my faith in the fact that it motivates me to do it. I think that I don't complain about the challenges, shall we say, I received, particularly from the media, to do with my Christian faith during my time as leader or since. somebody once said that a politician who complains about the media is like a sailor complaining about the sea. It's just it's there, isn't it? And you feel to be respectful. And to be honest, a number of my travails are probably caused by my lack of wisdom, as they were to do with anybody being unfair. But how my faith absolutely affects my career is that it's probably why I'm still an MP. I guess over the years, I've probably gone from being, and I say this humbly because I'm with plenty of awareness of my many, 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 many continuing failings. I've gone from being perhaps a bit too personally ambitious to recognising that politics is a way of serving people, and it's a way in which you can live out your Christian faith. And that means the day-to-day basics of serving individuals in a constituency, often people in desperate circumstances. It means having a platform to help those people who have no influence, and often I'll focus on the plight of asylum seekers, because anybody can defend the minority that's popular. They don't need it. But asylum seekers are a minority who are not popular, and they do need it. But also, it's a platform for me to speak the gospel. And so, amongst the reasons why, I'm still delighted to be an MP, and I'm not that ancient, but I've been doing it a while. The motivation is it is a way of living out my faith in public, and I think it's a valuable thing for a Christian to do. So, how has my faith affected my career? Very well. It's given me purpose, and it means I keep going.
That's a real great way to look at it. And of course, as Christians, we're all called to service and life is here. Which and some ways that's a nice link to the next question, because Keir Starmer is very keen to make his government of service, and so I wanted to ask you what you thought of his speech in the Downing Street Garden 2 days ago.
So obviously first of all, you've got to cut the guy some slack. He's only just started. I think one of the good things about British politics at the moment is we've got, maybe 4 or 5 years of a parliament, and we have the opportunity for some long-term thinking and some grown-up government. And some of the early signs are good, and some I'm not so sure about. Obviously, his message is deeply political, for us to be, as a country, from his perspective, aware of how bad things are, and we've not to expect any goodies soon. Now, I kind of think that there's some errors in what he's doing, and one of which is Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves trying to be very tight with the purse strings. I do understand there's not a lot of money in the coffers for what we might call revenue spending or increases in revenue spending. But what this government mustn't do, and it looks like it is doing, sadly, is to make the same mistake that I will confess the coalition government made, and that is to cut back or be unambitious on capital spending. Because I think that one promise I would really like this government to break, that it made during the election, is the promise not to borrow. I think they should borrow for capital projects. Because A, we need them, and B, actually, at a time of falling interest rates, it makes sense to invest now in ways that will build growth. And so that means railway lines, it means highways improvements, it means massive broadband infrastructure improvements, it means hospitals, it means all those sort of things that will generate economic activity and will mean that we're not just waiting for an upturn in the economic cycle, we actually make it happen. So I think there's a lack of ambition. I understand why. It's fairly obvious what the plan is. Let's have a year or two of cutting things, putting up taxes and being a bit miserable and blaming the Conservatives. Brackets, that's probably partly true. And then the great hope that by 2026-7, everything will look good. A load of money will go into schools and hospitals. And by the time of an election in 28 or 29, everyone will be feeling very happy. Now, I think that's unnecessary, some of that misery. I also think from a political point of view, it might not be that wise. So the economy was improving a little bit under Rishi Sunak, not a lot, but a bit, just as it was improving very significantly in 1997 under John Major. The thing is, though, the electorate tend to vote with their gut. And if they feel they don't like you, you're out. And so I suspect there's a real possibility that Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves might give us 2 years of misery and therefore undo any honeymoon they might have had. And so by the time anything does turn up and get better in 2 years' time, let's say, the public have given up on them. And that's I think politically this is high risk. I don't think these are normal times. And so my early appraisal of Keir Starmer's performance is that it's mixed. It's mixed.
Yeah, I agree with you. I got a deja vu from 2010 when the coalition came in, because it felt very much like the same. The whole, it felt it was blaming previous government, saying that there's a lot of pain to come and cuts and stuff, and I thought that's all very well, but you got to be careful.
Yeah, they are. So I mean, first of all, the two things there, saying there's pain to come only really works for you politically if there's something that is the opposite of pain in a couple of years' time. And it only works, even if that happens, it only works if people are still listening to you in 2 years' time. And what we saw with the Conservative government was, and it happened with all governments, it happened, I would say, to John Major after Black Wednesday, it happened to Gordon Brown after he kind of bottled that autumn election he didn't call in 2007. It happened to Nick Clegg after tuition fees and the coalition, and it happened to the Conservatives after Liz Truss. That basically whatever you do, the electorate stop listening to you. However good you are, that you're no longer in their thinking as a potential person to vote for. And so the problem that Starmer and co have is they might do that to themselves. And let's not forget, sometimes think, oh, well, Labour have been in power for 11, 12 years or 10 years when Brown did that. The Tories have been in power for 13 years when Major did that. Nick Clegg had been in power 5 minutes when he basically did something which meant that people weren't paying any attention anymore. So Starmer does not need to take the risk of basically maybe turning things round, but everybody having written him off by the time that happens. I think his, in opposition, I think he's been very politically astute. His first 2 months in number 10, I'm not sure if I'll give him any more than 5 out of 10, but we'll wait and see. I hope to be proved wrong.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. Anyway, I always say, I hope we prove wrong, and I hope they did things like, I really wish that they'd remove the 2-child cap on benefit.
Yeah,
I just can't see why.
Yeah. Well, I think the two kind of austerity measures, if you like, and I don't like using the phrase, but it's what people say, we know what we mean by that, are the 2-child cap not being lifted and also the scrapping of the winter fuel allowance. Now, I know that there are a lot of pensioners who don't need that, but I know there's more that do. And only a minority of people are on pension credits who will therefore keep it. You've therefore got millions of pensioners who will choose to keep the heating off now. And that's dangerous this coming winter at the same time as bills are going up. So I think that's, again, A, bad politics, and B, the Labour Party, one of their claims will be over, a century and a quarter of their existence, and I think it's true, is that they've always sought to make sure they alleviate the impact of poverty. And here are 2 instances where they've not done that, and they have the opportunity to do so. And if you don't show who you are in your first 100 days, people might get the wrong idea. And that's what I mean by, when things turn around, let's say that's a given in 2 or 3 years' time, people may have already made a judgment on the Labour Party by then. And my great fear throughout all this, and I probably ought to let you go after this, but my fear was always that the Conservatives would lose, you get a Labour government, and that they would have a very short honeymoon, and they would be underwhelming to a disgruntled electorate. And then after, people then think, well, where else? But they'll go and look for other alternatives. And those are alternatives potentially could be the populist voices of the far right and the far left. And that's why it matters that actually this is a Labour government that does deliver. And it also means the Liberal Democrats matter, because we need to make sure there is a counterpoint to a Labour government that is critical of it and is progressive. And my concern is you've got a Tory party in a shambles, and you've got far right and far left groups rubbing their hands together, waiting to take advantage of this political situation. And on that basis, Britain has never needed Liberals more than now, and we need to step up to the mark.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for you, and I think I'm right in saying, and I'm sure you'll correct me if I'm wrong, you know, although we were one on fight, they actually didn't get a massive share of the vote.
No.
Jeremy Corbyn got a much larger share of the vote, so it's absolutely not beyond, beyond possibility that we were to
both Labour and the Liberal Democrats had a very efficient result. You know, we both got a lot more seats than the number of votes we got would normally have given us. And that's because of tactical voting and a good strategy by both parties. But that means not a single inch of complacency. And we have different agendas, and we've got obviously different roles. One's in government, one's a much larger opposition party. But we mustn't take for granted the opportunities we've been given. My fear is, and we need to be deeply wise in how we use our roles. And obviously, I can't affect directly what Keir Starmer does, but he needs to demonstrate great wisdom and to be shrewd. We need to do the same. And our service of the country is to hold this new government to account, but to do so constructively and to do so from a progressive standpoint. Otherwise, I fear we might find that people start opting for far, far, far less savoury options.
That I'm a bit of danger of that. And I suppose the months and years ahead will be telling, and I'm sure that you hold the government to account. But it's going to be great the next few months, I see. What the early stages of the new government, like I say, it's going to be really great to watch and see if they get it right or not. Well, let's hope so.
David, thank you.
But Tim, thank you so much for doing this. I'm really grateful.
Total pleasure. I'm grateful that you asked me. Brilliant questions, and good luck, and we'll see you soon.
That's it. I hope so. Okay. Thanks again. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.